Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for this week's episode. My guest this week is Allison Wilcoxen, and she runs the Etsy shop NatureTats. She's been on Etsy since 2015, and as of today has over 11,000 sales. And Allison, I have all kinds of questions for you because I'm looking at the number of products in your shop and my mind is blown. So before we get to that, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm super excited. Let's do it.
So before we start, how would you describe yourself and what you do? Do you consider yourself more of a crafter or an artist or a maker or something completely different?
Honestly, I think a combination of those things because I'm kind of a generally creative person, but right now most of my energy is in NatureTats. So I do some I do some illustrations for NatureTats, but then, in my free time, I kind of craft and things like that.
Oh, nice. The other crafting that you do, is it purely just for the pleasure and relaxation? No plans on turning it into a financial venture?
Absolutely. Actually, I tend to find that I need to do some creative things that there isn't any pressure to make money off of it. So I will just do some wild paintings, and I like to get into ceramics and things like that from time to time.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes the pressure to earn from something we do takes some of that joy away.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we reserve some things for just the pure joy of it.
I totally agree. Yeah.
When did you first discover Etsy?
Probably around 2014.
Okay. And was that just as a buyer? Were you a shopper on the site, or was that when you started thinking about making a living using your artwork?
Yeah, actually, so to add to that, I think I started getting into learning about how Etsy works around that time. I probably was aware of it before, just because, I kind of around a bunch of creative people, and I think people have probably bought from it and, told me about it. But around 2014, I decided I wanted to start selling things that I was making. So I created a shop to just kind of dump any creative stuff that I was doing at the time. And that was like my introduction to it.
Was that when you opened NatureTats?
No, actually, I opened a different shop before that. I've had probably 3 shops total, but the first one, I did some watercolor paintings, and I was making some polymer clay jewelry and different things that I was making, and just kind of honestly, it didn't ever gain any traction, and it was just really experimental.
Okay. So now in NatureTats, what do you make and sell? I know what you do, but I want you to tell us.
Yeah, so right now, all of my energy goes to making these temporary tattoos, and so they're all inspired by nature, the designs. So I make a lot of like floral and insects and animals and things like that.
Yeah. And there's a story behind why you started doing them as temporary tattoos.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of a combination of things. I like tattoos, and I wanted to draw I wanted to get this wasp tattoo, and I drew it, and I wanted to make it into a temporary tattoo. I found out that you could do that online, and then I actually dropped some of those extra temporary tattoos that I had bought in that experimental Etsy shop that I was doing,
Mhm.
and so that was part of it. But then the other reason I decided to start Nature Tats is because I was really working on ceramics at the time, and um, I didn't really have the space, and I wasn't really comfortable with dealing with shipping ceramics. So there were a
Mm.
number of reasons that caused me to like move in more of a direction of something that would be easier to ship and store in a small area.
Okay.
Hmm.
So your second go around with the shop, when you were setting up Nature Tats, what were some of the things, other than knowing that you didn't want to deal with fragile items and bulky items? Were there some things that you can think of that you distinctly did differently the second time around and that you had learned from having had the first shop?
I think that everything that I had learned up to that point, um, honestly, I'm still learning all the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an ongoing process. But I think more of what I did was just take what I knew about, just trying to do my best to get orders out on time, have good customer service, and
Hmm.
and things like that. But getting into Nature Tats, it was I was focusing a lot on building a brand at the beginning. That was something that was kind of new to me and really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so then at what point did you know that Nature Tats was going to be more successful or gain more traction than the first one? And or would you say that because your approach was different, the end results were different?
Definitely the second one. So
Okay.
I think that I what I did know that I had to do differently was at the beginning of my Etsy experience, where I was just kind of putting random things together.
Hmm.
It was hard for somebody to probably look at my shop and really like connect with me as a person or my style. And so I knew that I wanted to make a brand that if somebody looked at it, they could like one thing, and then that would really be similar enough standing next to the other products that are in the shop so that they could connect with maybe all of them. Um, yeah, so I just wanted to make make it more into a well-rounded brand. You
Yeah.
know, all still learning. I have a lot of learning to do.
Yeah. No, I know we all do, but I think you really accomplished that because, um, yes, looking at your shop, I go in and I look and I know exactly what you do,
Hmm.
and I know what to expect. And I know that, let's say if I wanted a particular butterfly, I can
Uh-huh.
ask you if I don't see it in your store and it's in line with what you're already doing. It's not from left field, as
Right.
opposed to a shop that carried different types of items where if I wanted something, because it might be so hodgepodge, I
Uh-huh.
wouldn't think that it might be something that you would do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people know what to expect
Yeah.
because everything is so similar.
Yes. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of a lesson in branding for all of us is to, in our shops, figure out what we want people to know us for,
Yeah.
so that even if they don't specifically see something they want, they know that it's in line with our brand, and so it's possible that we can do it, and that can lead to custom requests or maybe not necessarily doing like big custom work, but like I said, can you do a particular, moth or butterfly for me, or a particular animal or leaf I saw,
Right.
that type
Yes.
of thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then they maybe could imagine how it's going to turn out based on uh, what they can see I've already done.
Yes, because you have a specific style.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like your style. I always thought black and white tattoos
Mhm.
might not give the message clear enough of what's being drawn, but
Mhm.
yours all do. Like, I have no questions. Like, oh yes, I can see the detail. And I
Yeah.
think that takes skill to be able to, with just, I shouldn't say black and white because it's really black, but different shades and gradations, to
So
be able to still convey the picture.
yeah, definitely. So we kind of talk about how whenever you pick one of the designs to wear, your experience and you wearing them is kind of what adds color and life to it.
Yeah.
So I try to make the designs simple enough to where if you look at like this toad that I have, for example, like your experience with toads can come through within that design. You also mentioned the black and white ink. So we actually haven't told anybody this yet, but as kind of whenever this podcast comes out, we'll be launching 3 new designs that actually will have white ink as well. So we're going to start moving in that direction. So there will be like white accents in all of the tattoos.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question, and I don't know and tell me if you don't know the answer to this, but do the tattoos render differently on different skin shades?
So that is part of why we're adding the white ink accents. And now that we're growing, so I have a good friend and shop assistant. I honestly could not get anything done without her. I love her. Her name's Michelle. And we talk a lot about that and how now that we're growing, we want to start like connecting with people in town to do more like group photo shoots so that we can represent all types of people.
Yeah.
And get feedback from people who wear the tattoos to see like how can we make the designs better so that they look great on everybody.
Oh, nice. I
Yeah.
like that. Okay, so Allison, what does a typical day look like for you in running your business, that is?
Right now, what it's looking like is we are focusing on wholesale. So we're sending a lot to boutiques around the States. And so Michelle comes in and she helps me with processing orders. And I'm learning right now about how to get into email marketing. So that's pretty much it. I mean, we're just primarily getting orders out and connecting with people who have questions, getting on social media and things like that.
How do you split your time up between creating new designs and then handling all the administrative stuff, or does Michelle handle the admin stuff? You work on the designs.
Well, right now, so I'll kind of back up a little bit. So prior to the pandemic, I had a lot more designs, and it's because I was making them in a different way. I was actually making them in-house. And then, long story short, because of COVID, my supplier that I was getting the materials from stopped making them. And so I had to shift a lot of what I do. And with that, meant that I had to reduce the number of designs. So right now, I'm probably going to be releasing 1 or 2 new designs every month. So I actually don't spend as much time as I would like doing the illustrations and drawing. A lot of what I'm doing is answering questions and planning marketing and orders.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The not as fun stuff, but the stuff that keeps the wheels turning, right?
That's right. And honestly, like I get a lot of suggestions from people and requests on designs that they'd like to see. So in a way, kind of spacing out that design time helps me really think about like what's my next best move.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned social media and marketing. Do you have a particular strategy, or do you primarily just post as you create and just leave it out there?
So I have been just posting randomly. I would say that I kind of struggle with social media a little bit as far as like keeping it regular. So
Mhm.
my efforts right now are in that direction. I'm trying to come up with more of a strategy. So it's kind of new to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's that learning curve, of course.
Definitely.
Um, how do you figure out what price to charge? And I would imagine that's different now that you've changed your production method.
hmm So yeah, I think there's a few things with that. I think it is important to know like what your competitors are charging, but I don't think it's something that I look at all the time. I just have a general idea of like what the prices are out there,
Mhm.
but then I also just am, uh, every once in a while revisiting how much I'm spending on materials and everything, just to make sure that I'm not losing money,
Right.
because obviously that's the wrong direction to be going in.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to keep it at a price that is accessible and that feels fair. And yeah, whenever we changed the way that they're being made, I was able to not increase the price, so
Oh, great.
that was really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just trying to keep it steady and accessible.
Yeah. Now, the other thing I'm curious about is inventory.
Mhm.
How do you know and how much of which designs to keep on hand?
So prior to the pandemic, I was making them as needed, actually,
Okay.
and that was good for some reasons because I was able to, um, if something was out of stock, I could just make it right then.
Hmm.
I could release new designs frequently. But now that we've shifted away from that, um, I I'm getting them in bulk. And so I just kind of looked at what were my best sellers at the time, had to go from like 70 designs down to 14 initially. So that was a huge jump. So
Wow.
um, I actually I went ahead and just bought 3,000 of each of my best designs, and then
Whoa.
just, it was a little bit crazy. And then I just committed to, I was like, well, I have these in stock. This is a totally different way of doing business for me. So I have to, make sure that these get out there. So
Yeah.
then I just tried to really clean up my brand to make it more, um, appealing to boutiques and anybody who might be looking for temporary tattoos, but it's going well so far. So right now, how we're measuring stock is we use a website called Trunk Inventory.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it counts what I have across the different platforms that I use. So that's been super helpful.
Oh, okay. Does it integrate with Etsy, and so it's able to check your stock levels there as well as other places that you sell?
It does.
Oh, nice.
The three places that we're selling right now are Etsy and Fair Wholesale, and on Shopify, so my website. So fortunately, Trunk integrates with all three of those, so it was a good solution for me.
Oh, nice. And it's I would assume it's not free.
Right, it's not
Okay.
free. Um, so I think they have different like brackets
Okay.
depending on sales you make.
Yeah.
hmm
So one of the things I love when I look at your shop is it has that coveted red line under an, a good number of your products. And I'm talking about that line that says, how many people have this in their cart,
Okay.
which always makes me happy if I ever see that on my listings, because I'm like, yeah, I mean, on the one hand, yes, on the one hand, no, because you're like, well, pay already. Don't just put it in your cart, right? But
Yeah.
it definitely is a signal of interest.
Yeah.
Do you
Yes.
do anything about that? Do you have a campaign where you will send coupons to those people who will appear to be on the fence, or do you even use that in your calculations of, okay, maybe I should make more of this type of design since many people seem to be drawn to this?
I do try to take advantage of the automated emails that Etsy lets you use and the other platforms that I'm on. And so I do have one set up for people who have items in their cart.
Mhm.
I don't take it into consideration as far as how many designs to keep in stock. Um, because I think that the way, with how my shop's doing right now, the numbers that show that are in people's carts are designs that I already know are doing pretty well.
Okay.
So I just kind of go based on whatever's selling.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um, have you ever had to deal with any customers who weren't happy with what they got? And if so, how did you handle that?
Actually, that's one thing that I love about Etsy is I feel like the people who are buying on Etsy, the vast majority of them are just totally understanding that they're dealing with a person
Yeah.
and a small business or just an individual artist. And I think people are just super understanding and kind. There definitely have been some times over the years where something happened and I ended up having to ship something late. And so I reach out to people and people are almost always totally understanding,
Yeah.
or I'll just refund them or whatever. But every once in a while, I do get somebody who's upset. And honestly, the best way that I have learned to handle those situations is just to be kind to that person, even if they come at you upset,
Mhm.
and just understand that maybe they're coming at you that way because maybe they have this prior idea in their mind that you aren't going to be helpful. So if you just show them that you are willing to be helpful, instead of also becoming upset, then usually the person is happy to happy to go along with whatever solutions you're offering.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And that's the best way I figured to handle what could turn into, really bad or volatile situations is kindness
Yeah,
and
definitely.
understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I had one just pop up that I was looking at, and kind of took me by surprise because he was just super upset from the get-go, and I think that it just sounded like he assumed that I was not going to be helpful. So then, whenever I just replied and was happy to help, I was like, "Hey, here's what I can do. It's not a problem."
Yeah.
He was happy that I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, Now you mentioned, well, no, actually, I have another question before we talk about your website.
Mhm.
But so now what you sell are temporary tattoos. So eventually they're going to come off.
Right.
Have you ever had any concerns, and especially like last year during the pandemic, about selling a product that maybe people view as discretionary or fun, or something I don't necessarily need but I want? And does it sometimes concern you that people might not want to buy if times get tough?
So, to my surprise, we did pretty well whenever everybody initially started staying home. And I think it's just because it is an inexpensive item.
Yeah.
It's something that you can do by yourself. And honestly, like if you don't, it's something that if you put a temporary tattoo on, you just kind of get that like giddy feeling where
Yeah.
you're excited about it in the moment. And I think that's kind of what people needed.
Yeah.
They just needed something to distract them and bring some excitement. And so we did pretty well during the shutdown, fortunately.
Okay, good. That's good to know. And yes, you're so right. Every time I put one, I've only ever done the kids' temporary tattoos.
Yeah.
And even putting those on, I'm like showing it to everyone, like, look at my tattoo.
It's exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes you feel light and happy.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so you mentioned that you have a Shopify website.
Mhm.
How much time and effort do you find that it takes to run that? Because I know that you have to do a bit more work as far as driving traffic to it and whatnot compared to Etsy.
Definitely. So there is the initial setup. So like with an Etsy shop or really any other platform, you have to take the time to, dig through all the features, learn the features, upload your product, get your personal information, and so that setup is a big chunk of time. But now, I'm just kind of looking at Shopify and Etsy side by side when I'm processing orders. So I just get orders out. And then the only other time that I'm really adding to my website is if I launch a new design, then I'll kind of, of course, add the product, but then maybe change up my homepage. So I there's a lot that I know that I can learn about things like SEO that I just don't know a lot about. So I'm not putting a lot of that into it. But to be honest, Shopify, probably for that reason, is my lowest. I make the lowest amount of sales on Shopify compared to the other channels. So yeah, but it is good to have for a number of reasons. Anyway, I have found I've been happy to have it anyway.
Yeah. When you tell people about your business, are you more apt to send them to your Etsy store or to your Shopify store?
I try to send people to Shopify just because as much as I do love Etsy, sometimes I think you can get distracted because you're
Yeah.
kind of, it's so easy to click on other products that are being suggested.
Yeah.
You know, Etsy wants to keep you on their website, and I think that they want to support sellers, but I think maybe their goal is to just get you to stay on their website and buy something either way. And so if I can send somebody to Shopify, they're not going to see like my competitors right there on my website.
Yeah, that's very true.
Hmm.
That's very true. It's scary in a way because you think you have your customers, but like you said, Etsy wants to keep people on the site. And so, it's to their benefit to say, well, check this out as well.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's similar to what you're looking at and you might like it, come check this one out too, which is good for the other seller, but not for you. Except if
Right.
you're the other seller and they're on somebody else's site. So it's it's a circle.
Right. Yeah.
Now,
Definitely.
you've mentioned Michelle, and we've talked about Michelle a couple of times. How did you go about finding her and hiring her for someone else who might be looking to hire? Because I know it can be hard to bring someone into your business because everything, first of all, is all in your head. And so to
Yes.
get someone to basically share that headspace and be able to execute the way you want to, it's not the easiest thing. So first of all, how did you find her? And secondly, what was the onboarding process like?
Okay. So years ago when I first started NatureTats, she is a friend of my brother's wife, my sister-in-law. So they went to high school together, and
Okay.
she reached out to my sister-in-law and said, "Hey, Allison's doing this temporary tattoo thing, and it would be cool if I could be a part of it." And so whenever we first met and we first started working together, it was because I needed someone to put the tattoos on so I could take pictures of.
Oh, she was your first model.
Exactly. Yes. And so we did a little bit. We did that kind of thing together for a while, and then I think there was like a gap of time where we didn't work together. And then at the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic, I I actually bought office space because I like outgrew my room that I was in, and I was like, I think it would be good for me to get some office space, and so my husband and I shared some office space. So anyway, now that I was going to work at a different location, I was like, I would really like to have somebody come and help me, like work with me. And so I asked Michelle if she would come back and like help me process orders and do more modeling. But honestly, the nature of our relationship has changed. Just it changes all the time. We're always learning like how to work with each other. And like you said, it's hard to kind of get everything out of your head and into words and like be cooperative. Especially it's like, it's my art and it's my business, but I'm also not so attached to it that I want everything to be about like me, or mine. I want it to be collaborative. So I, we're just always working on communication. Like, hey, what do you want to do? How do you want like work days to be? Like, what is good about this? What do you not like about it? What can we change? So I'm just trying to remain open to hear what she wants out of it. And I think our whole relationship, working in friendship, has just been about trying to understand each other and be better communicators.
Yeah.
So,
And I think, or would you say it's helpful that she's physically there as opposed to a virtual assistant?
100%. For me, absolutely. Yeah, it's so nice to just have somebody there. Yeah, running an online business can get kind of lonely.
Yes, yes. Okay, so is she there every day in the business?
So lately, she's been coming 3 days a week.
Okay.
Yeah, and so right now we're working out of my house.
Mhm.
So she comes to my house and we get stuff done.
Yeah. Well, I like that because I think one thing I got from what you said is referrals. Referrals are a good way to go and talking to people in our network. For you, it was, someone in your family, but, someone associated with someone in your family.
Yeah.
And just using our networks to find the help that we need. And then I guess everybody's dynamic is going to be different. You just have to figure it out somehow.
Right. Yeah. I think, yeah. And then whenever we started working together for the second time, it kind of just happened to work out that way. I wasn't initially planning on reaching out to her. I figured she had other stuff going on in her life, but in that moment, I knew I'm ready to bring somebody else on. And then she kind of came back into my life one way or another. And I was like, hey, do you want to do this again? And so it just kind of worked out that way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about your process with creating products. When you get a new idea, how long typically does it take from the time you get the concept for it to actually creating it and executing it and then having it up and ready for sale?
I think if I moved super quickly, probably the minimum amount of time would be maybe a month and a half.
Okay.
But sometimes it can take more than that. It just depends on how quickly emails happen and things like that.
Yeah.
You're waiting for somebody to get back to you, or or the ball's in my court, and but yeah.
Have you found that you create more designs based on what people are asking for, or do you tend to create more designs based on your own inspiration and creative, juices?
I think it's probably about 75% what I feel is the right thing to do, and then 25% taking feedback externally. I've kind of done it differently at different points. There was a period of time where I was just trying to put up all of the designs that anyone would suggest. I'm like, hey, if this person wants I don't know, a praying mantis, then maybe everybody will want a praying mantis. And most of the time it doesn't work out that way. It just happened to be person that was attached to that idea. So, I take in what people want to see, and then I just decide if I feel like I just have to. Sometimes it's a risk, and then other times I'm really sure. I know that, um, somebody's going to like this particular butterfly, and it's a really popular, well-known butterfly. So it's time to get that on the shelf.
Okay. Do you ever find yourself in a creative rut where you just creatively nothing is flowing, and how do you get yourself out of those?
Definitely that happens. If I have an iPad that I draw on, and so if I'm not really feeling like drawing something really well, then I'll just doodle, honestly. And if I just, scribble and doodle and just do whatever, and I kind of let go of like this attachment to creating something good or important or useful or productive, then it's like a warm up essentially. And then, doing enough doodling will put me in the mind space. And sometimes I'm kind of in a rut like that for, weeks or more, honestly. And then other times I just am inspired and jump right into it and draw some cool stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
What would you say, looking just at the overall the big picture of your business, what are some of the things that you can say you did that you think have helped you be successful, that you think other people can learn from and maybe implement in their own Etsy shops too?
Mm-hmm. I think some of the things that I know that I have done well are first, customer service, like we were talking about earlier. I think it's easy to feel attacked if somebody's coming at you a certain way. And just if you can kind of detach from that and try to develop your ability to just respond with kindness, no matter what the question is or how upset somebody is, or if they leave you a bad review or whatever, just, offer to help and assume that they mean well. And then I would say persistence is another super important one. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and at some points I haven't been very productive at all. And honestly, I felt like nothing was coming out of it. But I have also considered throwing away NatureTats and just forgetting about it. But I'm glad that I didn't, because, the more I'm persistent, like good things do come out of it. And whenever I get good reviews and see pictures that people have taken wearing them and like their excitement, that is awesome.
Yeah.
And so being persistent, like even if you feel discouraged, just take your time to collect yourself and take care of yourself. Mental health is important. And then, pick it back up later, but like, don't throw it away. And so, and then I think also going back to talking about developing a brand, I do spend a lot of time really visualizing and planning what I want the whole collection and like the product and the packaging to look like, just so it's just, nothing's too distracting. It really highlights the product. It looks very consistent and professional. So, and mine's not complicated. It's literally just a little tag, and the product is inside. The temporary tattoos are in a little cellophane clear bag. But I, prior to just having all of that made, I kind of measured, well, how are these going to be hung or how are they going to be displayed? And I keep them on a pegboard. So I kind of measured everything out, decided how I can get the materials that I need. So just put a lot of planning and thought into that if you're thinking about taking the route of, refining what you make into like a more rounded brand. Yeah.
I like that, because actually when you mentioned the packaging, I remembered, I looked down at my notes. I had actually made a note to mention your packaging, because exactly what you said. That stood out to me. It really highlights your product, but your brand is very clear on it. And I was going to say, wow, how what goes into, because it looks like a lot of thought went into it, but it's so simple and just direct to the point, which I guess is the sign of a good brand, where you can tell what the brand is, but the product itself is not diminished because of the brand overwhelming the actual product. Like the product shines.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean that's the goal. I want to make it memorable and really, eye-catching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever, or did you ever, because we're not counting last year, do live shows, like craft shows or vendor events where you sold in person?
Yes. Yeah, right. I didn't do any last year, but prior to that, I have done some. I like doing them for the reasons of just connecting with people, and people get super excited to put on tattoo or
Yeah.
temporary tattoos whenever they're like walking around a craft fair.
Yes.
So I love being a part of that. It's I'm an introvert, so it takes me a lot of energy to just put myself out there,
Yeah.
and then I'm pretty tired afterwards. But I think in the end, it's worth it.
Yeah.
So I like doing those. I've done a handful of them.
Were they
Yeah.
worth it? Like, because I know there's a lot that goes into doing craft shows and vendor events, because you have to set up, you have to have your branding and all that, on
Mhm.
top of paying for some to actually be there. Have you
Mhm.
found that they were worth all the effort for you?
Well, some have been and others were not.
Mm.
I think that, I've gone to a couple that were well known, like reputable craft fairs here in Austin, and then some other smaller ones. There was one that I went to that really, I mean, we were standing out there all day and we probably had like tops 5 people come up. And so it just wasn't really promoted very well. But
Mm.
I think that, like that's another one of those things, like you just can't get discouraged because it was kind of upsetting that that happened. But for the most part, it ends up being worth it. I think also I've had to make some decisions of like, I don't want to invest too much money in the setup. I'm just going to try to do the best I can with what I have already. Maybe paint something like a block of wood to elevate your products or whatever. But if you don't want to make business cards because you think people are just going to throw them away, like you have to make those calls for yourself. Sometimes it's right for you, but then if you're not ready to do it, I've just had to kind of do the best I can with what I have at the time. But I'll probably end up doing more once we kind of get back into socializing.
Yeah, because I can see those being popular at those types of events.
Yeah.
Folks can get instant gratification. They do it, they put one on, walk around with it, and then
Yeah.
get one for a friend, to take home, or, to give to someone else.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think that's a big part of what makes it exciting is just like wearing temporary tattoos and matching tats with your friends.
Yep.
It's a big thing. Yeah.
Yes. Uh, what is one thing, and you can give more than one, but something about selling on Etsy that you really enjoy? And then alternatively, are there any features that you would like to see implemented on the platform?
Um, what I like about Etsy is I think it is an amazing platform to get started on. Honestly, I've just learned so much about selling a product, running a business, creating a brand. Because like myself, like so many other people, we're kind of just teaching ourselves how to do this, and Etsy really helps you get going. So I think there is a lot of support and there's just a community around it. So that's awesome. I'm not really sure about features that I would add. I think, I love looking at the stats. And so I would just love to see just more specific stats. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, honestly, but
Okay.
um, I think it's good for what it is.
Yeah. Yes. And for those of us who like to look at numbers, we can never get enough stats. But
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yes.
It's like, you want to tell me the time of day they looked? I'll look at that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So a lot of what you've said has been, I think, just really good advice for, new sellers as well as veteran sellers. What plans do you have, or do you hope for NatureTats going forward, looking into the future?
I That's a good question. What I want to do with NatureTats is I feel like I have a pretty good idea of operations. And I have this good relationship with Michelle. So we talk a lot about kind of over time in the future, adding to our team so that we have more of this kind of creative community where, um, you know, because Michelle also has an Etsy shop. And so we talk a lot about how to run them. And so we want to be more involved with people who are makers um, and just like uplifting people. So I think if I can add to NatureTats in a way that it centers um, just uplifting people, that's where I want to go with it, honestly.
I like that.
It's a fun, inexpensive product, but I think that there's potential for it to be more. And, just building that community is what I would like to see happen for NatureTats in the future.
That sounds great. And Austin, from what I recall and know, is a very creative community too.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Absolutely. So hopefully you're able to pull that together.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Trunk as a tool that helps you keep track of your inventory. Are there any other resources or tools that you find particularly helpful in the running of your business?
So Trunk is something that I use. Yes. I try to just learn about the features that the platforms that I'm already on, offer and try to take advantage of those. So I'm still learning a lot there. I'm now getting more into trying to plan marketing strategies and email marketing and all of that. So I'm looking at MailChimp, trying to learn MailChimp right now. That's my focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say everyone knows, but I know from time to time I talk about how awful I am with email marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I've resisted it, but then at this point in my life, I'm like, this is just something that I have to learn and get into some kind of groove so that if I ever hand it off to another person to do, I will know like what I want.
Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, do you have, Allison, any Etsy shop shout outs? And it could be, well, any shop.
Just to share other Etsy shops?
Yeah, or it could be another seller who maybe you like the work that they're doing, or you've bought from them and you just want to, just give them some, good, what do you call it? Just a shout out.
Yeah. Well, I think I want to just call out Michelle, my shop assistant. Her shop is called Further Studios, and so she is her goal. I don't want to speak for her, but what we talk about, she wants to focus on like sustainability. So she reuses materials and creates art out of reused materials, and she's super creative. She has a really cool style, and so she's kind of getting started. So yeah, absolutely. I think that she's gonna create some cool stuff in the future too.
That's fantastic. Okay, good. So I will link to Michelle's shop so folks can check her out as well.
Awesome.
Thank you. If folks want to connect with you, maybe just ask you questions about designs, or just connect with you after this, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Probably the best way would be email. So you can email hello@naturetats.com. But, I check all of the messages on Instagram. I think there's a contact form on my website as well.
Okay.
So any way that you can find me, I will respond.
All right. And I will link to Allison's website, of course, to her Etsy shop as well, and to where you can find her on Instagram. So if you're on convome.com and you go to this episode, everything will be there and available for you to connect with Allison. Allison, thank you so much for being my guest on the podcast, for sharing what you do, and for just honoring nature. I like that you do that. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm still super excited. I really appreciate everything that you're doing.
You are most welcome. And I thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you want to connect with me, please go to convome.com. There's a contact form there. If you prefer social media, I'm not the best there, but you can reach me on Instagram at Etsy Conversations. And I will be back with another podcast episode next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.